Welcome, my friend. It's good to see you. Please, take a drink, take a seat, and listen to the tale of the Mermaids Vengeance. A farm labourer named Penaluna lived in a deep valley of the parish of Perazabulo with his wife and little daughter. The neighbours often called him Penna the Proud, for he and his wife, Honor, kept themselves a little aloof, and his master, a wealthy yeoman, placed so much trust in him that he made him the manager of the outlying farm under the Hind. The Hind was jealous of Penaluna for more reasons than one, and in small ways often made his life a misery, but he had never any legitimate cause to complain of him or his work, and this was part of the grievance. The other cause was an old fondness for Honor, who had preferred Penna's suit to his when they were both young men. Honor nowadays resented the way in which the Hind, Tom Chennels, used to persecute her husband, though Penaluna himself bore all without complaint. At home she did all she could to make their humble cottage comfortable for him, and he had a further consolation in his little daughter, whom he dearly loved. As she grew up, this child, Selina, became beautiful, but always her face was still and without animation. There was a strange rumour in the village that when she was small, her mother used to take her to bathe in a pool, which was a favourite spot of the mermaids. At that time she was not a pretty child, until one day, while playing in the pool, she slipped from her mother's hold and disappeared under the water. When she rose to the surface and was seized by her mother and carried to safety, though the mother saw no change in her, the gossips of the village said that a beautiful changeling had been put in her place. Certainly as she grew up, though in all other ways a normal girl, her fondness for the waves and the seashore seemed to grow greater, and her reluctance to go with her mother to church more marked. When Selina was 18, a nephew of the squire, a young soldier named Walter Trewulf, who had been wounded in the wars, came into Cornwall to regain his health. He soon began to take note of Selina, who with her father would often be walking on the shore, where Walter himself was walking after being driven there in his uncle's pony carriage to save him from too much fatigue. In time they became acquainted, and the young man, though selfish and unprincipled, came under the spell of Selina's gentle ways and looks. The jealous Hind, Tom Chennels, watched their growing devotion to one another, and fanned the harmless friendship into a base intrigue. He even contrived to send Penaluna away for a time to a distant farm, and Walter took the occasion to win Selina's trust and gained her love. After 3 months, the father returned, and at once felt the change in his once happy home. It was a good day for him when Walter disappeared from Perazabulo, where he had in fact never intended to stay once restored to health. But Selina pined for her lover, and her parents watched helplessly her declining health. Chennels insinuated to the squire that the Penners had been purposely trying to ensnare Walter and win him for Selina as a husband. The result of his lying tales was that Penaluna, once a favourite of the squire, was now dismissed from his service. His excellence at his work soon procured him a new employment, but nothing seemed able to bring health to Selina. At last, in giving birth to her child, she died, and there were those who said that in her last days spirits of another world had been in her presence, that she had been in some degree sustained and cheered by them. After her death, all went ill on the farm, and the Hind, Tom Chennels, overwhelmed by misfortunes, took to drink, and was in time himself dismissed by the squire. In the meantime, Walter had returned to Cornwall, and through his entreaties a small cottage was allotted to Chennels, which became the centre for drinking and gambling orgies for all the neighbourhood, with Walter Trewulf as their leader. One night, Walter left this place very late, and without being aware of it he wandered from his path and took a way down to the shore. As he reached it he heard a voice singing more sweetly than anything he had ever heard. It was a woman lamenting her lost child, and as he listened, lured by the music, Walter drew nearer to the sound, until he came to a cabin, at the mouth of which sat the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. At the sight of a man she sprang up and would have fled, but Walter caught her by the arm and held her. As he did so, he realised that the face was Selina's, and that she was looking at him with love, but also with a strange new power. But she only said, "Go." He found himself alone with the waves already rising about his feet. He sought her and called in vain, but though he heard an echo of laughter, he could not find her, and at length he retraced his steps and made his way home. At last he had become aware of his guilt, and so strong was his remorse that he went and confessed his whole story to the priest, who, although convinced that much of it must have been a dream, yet gave him his counsel and his blessing. From that time, Walter no more led the revels in Chennel's cottage. He was utterly changed and seemed to be under the influence of an unseen power. His health again began to fail, and the villagers said that someone, probably the Penas, must have ill-wished him. Walter himself cared for nothing but the lovely face which haunted his thoughts. At last, on a dark, moonless night, he made his way again to the place on the shore where he had seen it, and soon he heard the same lovely voice singing. But now it was a song of joy for a returning lover, and he remembered that that day was the anniversary of Selina's death. As he reached the mouth of the cave, the same lovely face and form appeared, and a burst of laughter rang through the rocks. This time she came towards him, gently reproving him for his slowness. She looked at him fondly, twined her arms about him, and made him sit down beside her and talk of love. She took his head between her hands and kissed him, saying, "Kisses are as true at sea as they are false on land. Now you are mine till death." In terror, Walter heard her words. Her arms held him, the waves began to rise about them, and a great storm came on. He begged her to let him go, but she said, "Give me back my dead," and kissed him again. There was a stream of fire and a terrible crash of thunder, and he saw that the lightning had struck Tom Chennel's cottage and killed the wicked hind. At the same moment, a huge wave carried Walter and his captor away from the shore. She seized his hair and floated, still singing, on the waters. Then she and a host of other mermaids played with his dying form, tossing it from one to another in final revenge for the innocent girl whom they had adopted as their own, and whom he had ruined. And so ends the story of the Mermaids Vengeance. I hope you found it entertaining, and if you did, please subscribe, like, and maybe leave a comment down below. It was a pleasure to sit with you again, my friend, and I look forward to meeting you again very soon.